Hello? Hello?
Yes, your name?
Osborne.
I was called before, I think.
Yes, I have.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
Yes, you're part of the Black Caucus, right? What I mean, Bert's boys. Black Caucus. Yes.
Yeah.
Black Caucus, the Black Ghetto got to say. You underfunded you guys. You made a lot of progress with Motown and hip hop, and it's all over. You black guys, they're fucking in the poorhouse.
We're everywhere.
Yeah. You thought you were everywhere, but you didn't recommend and understand the biblical power of Mr. Trump. Trump's going to bring the white guys back, man. It's going to be fucking great. We're going to start listening to Pat Boone and maybe a little Frank Zappa.
Hey, I've been listening to Frank Zappa now since you brought me on, since you got me on the bandwagon.
Good, isn't it awesome?
Oh yeah, he's the most amazing artist I've ever heard.
Very good. You're ascended. That's the part. You were ascended first, Osborne. We'll let you take over the Black Hawk. That was an incredible statement. Listen to this. This is Frank 40 years ago. I've been playing it. Just listen to this. It's a short piece. I don't know if you heard me earlier. That's 46 years ago. Look at the power. They couldn't even allow that on the radio. It would just cause a revolution. I mean, look at
that's what it is. That's what it is. Totally next level. That's completely next level.
Yeah, no Bootsy Collins, James Brown, they all fucking could learn from that.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what happened.
The amount of energy.
He went funk. Yeah, the energy's incredible.
Incredible, yeah.
James had to go into funk. Miles went into jazz rock. Frank could outdo any of them, and Downbeat ignored him until he died. Then they said he won the Downbeat great guitarist of all time. But nobody would allow him on the radio. But he is doing that in 1970.
And I think what really is amazing is the diversity that Frank had.
Yeah.
I mean, like the so many different compositions he has. You listen to one
and tone.
And you can't tell that it's him. It's almost like he has so many different creations that it's hard to differentiate what genre he really is. He's everything, you know.
He's the whole environment. He was the most up-to-date artist using all the technology available, so he would make fun of jazz. He says it's not dead, but it smells funny. He wasn't limited to jazz. He would use jazz musicians. He wasn't limited to funk. He wasn't listening to anything. And he just made this incredible ionic level of sound. So he's ionic. And he's like the power of ion.
Yes. And
it's great that you can listen to this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love stuff like Frank Zappa. When you got me onto that, I started listening to several of his compositions, the Borello de Ravel. The redo for that, his own like spin off to that is amazing. It's just simply the upbeat feeling that he has that he implements into it is just amazing. And another one that I really like is the Watermelon
and Easter Hay.
Yes.
That is unbelievable. As a matter of fact, we just heard Ion is jealous of Zappa. He competes with Zappa. He's always been knocking Zappa. He said earlier today, we'll give him one song, Watermelon Easter Hay. That's not bad. He allowed that one. But that's cliche. That's normal, nice, excited, nice lyrical stuff. But it's great what he does, and he can do it, but it's just Ion to go with the sappy one, He can't appreciate the other stuff. But see, you know what Ion said? You might you go on to howionic.com, you'll see us talking about Frank 6 years ago, and Ion said the equipment that's being made today in the last few years is now only allowing you to hear what Frank put into his music. In other words, as we get better digital quality or whatever they make it better, now we can hear what Frank put in there. The equipment wasn't even qualified for the last 35, 40 years to make you hear the real Zappa. Now the equipment's getting better. Now we can even hear what really is Zappa.
You can actually capture
what he put in there.
We can hear it. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's an amazing time, man. I'm telling you. Definitely. I definitely love his music. I can't imagine all of the time and all of the effort that he actually put into all of his music and all. You can't imagine it. You can't even think about it. Like, it's just insane.
He was a truly inspired genius because he would go on vacation and all this music's pouring through his mind. Like, he couldn't stop it. He's like constantly channeling. So he'd be in the hotel on vacation with his family, and he'd be writing out stuff that was coming to him. He used to do it in the hotels on tour. He'd do it on the airplanes, the bus stations. The musicians talk about this. The guy was totally tapped into the ear world and more.
And he also taped everything.
He taped everything that was going around him. You might, if you don't know 200 Motels, it's pretty funny. The musicians, it's about the musicians being on the road, 200 Motels. They used to do about 40 hotels a year, and they did it for 5 years, 65 to 69, and so it's 200, 5 times 40, 200 motels. So the musicians go crazy. This is what his documentary says. They go nuts in this situation, and so you have them saying, Frank is always listening, these musicians are saying. And this is what Frank wrote for them to say. So they're doing this fiction, and they're going, Frank, he's always listening. He's always taping us. And they go, where is he now? And they look over, and on the mantelpiece is a beer bottle. They go over, is that you, Frank? Are you that beer bottle? Come on, Frank.
like a role play. It's almost like a role play. That's amazing. That's good stuff right there. Good stuff right there.
So if you have just started out, go back a couple of weeks ago, Sunday morning. So it wasn't last week. We weren't on. It wasn't the week before. No, we got hacked last week, right? Then the week before. So 2 or 3 weeks ago, Sunday morning. Yeah, somebody came in and got past Bill's block and was turning off the music I was playing. If you can get into my position, you can click on the pause and stop what I'm playing. See, I can click anything. Yeah, and this hacker got in there and was fucking with our Zappa music, our Zappa special. I had to stop. And Bill's going to make a better security. He has to beef up the security to stop the hacker, but somebody got in there. So we didn't get to play. Was that last week, Carol? No, that was Christmas.
Somebody doesn't want you to change the world.
Oh, no, there's a lot of those. It's the majority of humanity. The majority of humanity is against
right,
the fucking angels hate me. Did you know I'm the dark soul? The angels, they have joined together. Michael's angels and Gabriel's angels and Lucifer's angels to say we must stop Bob. Because if Bob's successful, the angels are out of work. And so I'm called the dark soul. I was just talking about that this morning. Maybe I'll play it about how they hate me. So, yeah, I don't just have humans against me.
Right? All the forces.
No, everything ever happened. All the futures. Because this is the game changer. And I consider Frank's music, like I was just playing, I start off the New Year's party tonight with that. He plays the intensity of my life. Like me going, dude, that what he was just playing there, just roaring. That's the way I must run. I must operate on that level. Stay ahead of the angels. I knew Frank. I inspired him. I inspired Frank. Wow. I've known him since 1958. I didn't hang out with him in 59, 61, but I occasionally saw him in those early years. Then you might want to read the interview I did with him, the best interview that all the biographers use, 3.5 hours. You can email me and I'll send you stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you send me an email. I'll send you a link. Send it to ion@howironic.com. I mean, we rarely get black people. You black people, you have your own music. You got wonderful music. You're great. You're the best. You can't hear Frank. You guys can't hear Frank. You got too much of your own great music.
The irony in that is I have more white friends than I do have black friends.
Oh, okay. Well, that's true. You're not a black person. If you're hanging around with, that's why he likes Zappa, Bert. He's not black. I don't know any black people like Frank, except a couple that played for him, but you don't hear the black people talking about him. The jazz guys don't talk about him.
Well, you see, that's because most black people have a wall, and when you're in a new environment, you have to put that wall down, and you have to jump in the waters. And most of them are afraid of the waters. They're like, oh, there's sharks in it. There's this. There's that. There's you can't fully embrace it.
Here's a subtle thing. The blacks are a very talented race in many ways, and they're really good at music, and they've made incredible music, for 100 years. The problem is, Aristotle says your genius, your talent can become your flaw. So the black people, they get this extra problem where the white guys suppressed them and didn't recognize their talent, ripped it off, so they got a big chip on their shoulder, and they're going to hold on to that for a long time as a key part of their identity, and that's going to get in the way of this ascension. So isn't it interesting, like the first will be last. The blacks were the first in entertainment in many ways, and maybe in other ways. There's a new movie about 3 black women who were very important in NASA, was it, Carol? Yeah. Who talks about them? 3 black women were these key scientists at NASA. So, they're not getting a fair shake, so they're relegated to supposed entertainment. But even that, they're really good at. They now know they're good at it. That's their talent, their specialty. But it's going to be a flaw. As Bert's learned, you got to drop all that human level, no matter what you did, to get with the ionic Bob intensity.
Yes. Yep. I learned that by listening to you for the past almost 2 years now. I've been listening to you. So
that's good.
I've definitely been on the wagon for a while now.
So how long have you been listening to Frank? Like 6 months? A year?
Yeah, about a year. Yep. Yeah, about a year. Yep.
It astounds me what it's like to not know about Frank. And, millions of people don't, but I don't know how one could...
the first time I heard his music, my Kundalini just bursted all over the place.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I completely it went crazy. It felt like I was at a concert. You know what I mean? It felt I was in the front row. You know what I mean?
And I was just going to mention that, Osborne, but before I go into that, do you remember what the song was? What were you hearing that burst your bubble there? Do you know? You probably didn't notice it.
No, I didn't. It was something that you had played on the show. You didn't say what the name of the song was.
Right.
You just played it. Yeah.
Would it be in the first hour, the musical hour?
Mm-hmm.
One of the many songs in the first hour? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm reading this new book. It might be worth getting. It's called Frank Zappa FAQ. It's written by a guy I knew at CKLN. He became a librarian at CBC, John Curcelli. So he's done the latest book on Zappa. And it's very good. He coordinates puts his life in order in all these different new categories. But he goes through the videos that Zappa made. And one of them is the shows in New York City at what's called the Pier in August 84. Now, Carol and I were at those shows, and we were like in the 6th or 8th row. And so there's footage to the degree you can see the audience when the camera moves away from Zappa. You can start to freeze the footage and look into the crowd. You probably could see me and Carol, because Carol's standing on the chair. We're standing on the chair. We're only 8 rows in. If I took the time, you have technology to magnify. But we were we had this several times. In 84, though, we're in the outdoor pier in the 8th row, and he goes for like 2 hours plus. It is like a UFO landed. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's so beyond normal entertainment. It's so immense, and he has some fantastic reproduction equipment. He makes the best producers. He says, people pay money for my shows. We're going to give them the best we can do. So he always has the latest equipment. So the quality is incredible, and you're close, and they're roaring along for 2 hours with never stopping, just going from one thing to another.
Yeah, I've noticed the energy that he has is unrivaled, like literally unrivaled. Like the first time I remember when I heard one of his, I think it was Muffin Man. Yeah, I would think it was Muffin Man. And the beginning, he has this kind of like you told me before, that role play, kind of like, it's almost like he's mocking Little Man. He's mocking how Little Man thinks.
Yeah, that's right. And he's mocking the whole entertainment setup constantly.
Yes, I love that. That's one of the things that really drew me. Yeah.
He's okay. Now, what were you just saying? What Muffin Man? What do you mean by role? You mean he knows he's being an entertainer role, and he's mocking the role that you little people put him into.
Right.
He has to stimulate you. Yes. He has to get you going.
Yes. I love it. I love how he does it.
In 1968, one of the things I played a couple weeks ago, he's in Vancouver, and he's talking about how only the Canadian government sponsored Edgar Perez. That's Zappa's hero, and he says, I think we should play this, and he goes on a bit about how great Perez is. He says, okay, now everybody get ready, we're going to play this fucking bullshit. He doesn't say fucking bullshit, he says nonsense. He immediately puts it down just before he's building it up, and you're getting ready to hear this special experience, and then he fucking insults it. He's always contradicting. He's like erasing the hypnosis he's creating, and so you'll find in some of the things I'm playing by him, the longer concerts, he's always mocking and undermining even what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's what.
Yeah. It's almost like he realizes that his potential could be even more than what it is.
Right. He could make the crowd, if they got more ascended or whatever you want to call it, it could even be greater. And he used to praise the New York audiences. They seem to be the most lively and ability they're familiar with Frank's history. They responded greatly. So he always had his favorite holiday, Halloween, in New York. But when he played in Toronto, he says, you people, he's looking out over the huge auditorium, and he says, or Maple Leaf Gardens, a hockey rink, and he says, you people are responding like you're watching TV. And that's what they do. They just watch. He criticized the audience. What do you think we got, TV? And no Canadians responded. The Canadians didn't even boo him. They just sat there, that's the next part of this TV show. They've been passively watching American programming for 40 years. It's natural for them to just watch whatever's happening and not to participate. And he would mock it. He would mock people. And then every now and then he'd go to Finland or someplace, and the audience would be good, and he'd celebrate it. He'd get them involved, and then he'd perform very differently or do something.
And that can definitely understand that that New York would respond the way they did, because it's not like I've heard you talk about it before, that New York is a modern day Babylon. So
right,
you know,
New York as it is now. Listen, it's not a modern day Babylon. New York City exists like it is now 4,000 years ago. That's why it's in John the Revelation. It was there back then. John could see it because everything that is made was made in eternity, therefore had no beginning. So everything that's going to happen over the next, quote, 2,000 years already exists because that's how big eternity is.
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean. Like no beginning and no end. It's just there.
Right.
It's just,
so everything has always been here.
Right. It's just progressing.
I don't know if it's progressing. Other things are being created. Like we are creating civilization, so we're adding something to it. Overlaying. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's
and there
incredible.
was. Now there was something about Zappa. I don't know. 3 weeks ago, I played a concert. What was that? It was 2 hours and 20 minutes. Ian didn't come in, didn't interrupt it. We had no hackers, so it was like not last week, not the week before. So 3 weeks back to listen to it. I think it starts around hour 10 in Ian blog spot is when the beginning of Sunday morning. And everybody who heard it was flabbergasted. Several people fainted listening to it. They couldn't keep up with Frank. He played 2.5 hours, and people, Inettes were listening like him and that, and they drop off after 45 minutes. His momentum just kept driving down the road. And it's a great example of him going 2 hours and 20 minutes without stopping. And can you imagine being a musician in that situation? These guys that play with him, they should be given medals to survive that and do it.
Super happy. That's like your hands like that, you know, like that energy.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Playing bass. Drumming.
It's so amazing.
And of course, the people that did do it became great musicians. Terry Bozzio is considered now one of the best drummers in the world. And he played for Zappa for like 13 years. But, you know, he became a master drummer working with Zappa. Yeah, Terry Bozzio. Now he just does workshops. He's a big deal archetypal drummer. But he went to the correct school. In 75, he became a member of Zappa's band. Matter of fact, when he auditioned, he already was so good that there's all these musicians lined up auditioning in 75 for the band. And when Terry played, he did pretty good. Then Zappa said, okay, who's next? And there's like 10, 15, 20, or 100 drummers there. And none of them said, no, we can't be as good as Terry. So nobody competed to let Terry get the job. Nobody would dare go out and play because it was so puny. So Zappa always attracted the best guys.
What do you think about Steve Vai?
Well, he's another kid. These are fanatic teenagers who gravitate to Frank, memorized his work. So Steve Vai, he got in the band because he first could transcribe the complex stuff. He learned how to translate. Was it Steve Vai, our neighbor, was a friend of? Yeah, our neighbor in City Island. This guy was a junkie at this point in 2005. He's now a junkie, 2005. Well, he was in the Berkeley School up in Boston, I think it is, in, say, 1979. First year, freshman. And he meets this other musician named Steve Vai. And so in the fall, they've only been at college for a month or two, just starting out. And then one night, Steve Vai says to this guy, says, hey, there's a Zappa concert. We should go see Frank. And the guy turned it down, and Steve went. And then Steve didn't come home until the next day. And so the guy that I'm talking about, my neighbor, back in 79, says, well, how come you didn't come home? He says, I got backstage. I got talking to Frank, and I said, I'm going to be in the fucking band. And this neighbor guy fainted. What? I fucking blew blew it. I didn't go. You know, he had his whole entrance there. And he fucking didn't go. And then Steve Vai, in the dormitory, like a week later, in the dormitory, everybody heard this, the fucking phone rings. And Steve Vai goes to answer the dormitory phone, and he starts talking to somebody. And my neighbor realized, holy shit, Frank called him. And Steve Vai was gone. He started, his first job was to transcribe Zappa's stuff before he got in the band. So he only lasted like 3 or 4 months in college. And then he became in the band, and then he got the best school, and he became a dynamite guitarist, playing with those other guys. You know, who were the Eddie Van Halen, I think he ended up playing with. And so Steve Vai, what a blessed guy, what a lucky guy that he went to the concert. And meanwhile, this guy that didn't go, he's frustrated from that point on, and I'm with him 25 years later, and he's a fucking junkie. You know, he's half dead.
Oh, yeah. If you can't miss an opportunity like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and he did. Like, and his buddy, his friend made it.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. Right.
I mean, and I met the guy. You see, this is where I'm archivist. I always find the key stories. This guy was my neighbor. Of all the people in New York City, the one guy got killed by Frank and Steve Vai was my neighbor. So Bob could be told, and Bob could tell the world for the next 1,000 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
Okay, anybody else in the band you know of? Bobby Martin is a tremendous guy. He is a very young person, young teenager, pretty talented. He was on the records in the background and choruses and that for the great R&B stuff of the 60s. So this guy goes to great music, you know, your music, black music, and he's a key guy in the Baltimore studios, and then he gravitates and eventually ends up playing with Frank. And he is awesome singer, but what a way to go! As a kid, you might like to be part of the Motown sound, right?
Was he in Chunga's Revenge? Chunga's Revenge?
No, he's later. He's in the 80s.
Okay,
he does Whipping Post. He does incredible singing. I almost die. What's the lyric, Carolyn? How is it? I feel so great. I feel like I'll never die. And he does this amazing singing. I can bring it up and play it. But
yeah, play it because you fucked it up.
I fucked it up?
Yeah.
Well, you can't remember it now.
Play it now.
It's one of Carol's favorite. We actually got to meet Bobby Martin in the 88 concerts in New York. Went found the club they were at next door and had a good conversation with him. But anyways, this is the perfect life. He's a white kid. He loves black music. He gets to be, he's talented enough in his teenage to play and record with James Brown and all these people. Like he was in the studio being the background singer or something. He goes from that to other bands, and he ends up, in a way, peaking his career with Frank Zappa. That's like going from one great heaven to a later heaven. It's an amazing career trajectory, and he's really good in. He started when he was auditioning with Frank. It's in this book. He did this and that, and he was a trained musician and sort of impressed Frank. And then Frank asked him to sing something, and within 10 seconds he hired him just from Bobby Martin's voice. It was so fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Holy fuck! You're in the band. Sign here because of his voice. And Adrian Ballou's another guy. Frank finds he's a bar band guy somewhere in the States, and Frank sees him at the bar and realizes this guy's talented, and so he's in that great footage of Muffin Man and Cameron Brillo you can see on YouTube, and so he goes on to be a key musician for David Bowie and all kinds of people. A lot of great musicians got their great backup from the Zappa school. That's why their chops, they got their chops. That's why, as the Evergreens told me 30 years ago, this era, late 60s into the now, will be known as the Zappa era eventually, if there are such things as historians. And that's because he is behind everything. He used the newest technology. He did this first. He did that. He obviously is the greatest musician. He's beyond categories. And as people get into using their digital equipment and don't have categories, they don't have to because they can record anything and make sampling. He's the guy that approximated that way of looking at sound. no categories.
Yeah.
So it will be the great this era. He'll be the Mozart, so to speak. Now we've done 195 hours. We should actually put this. This is a good conversation. We'll add this. Roxy and I and Bert did 195 hours on Zappa with Roxy's updated classical knowledge and knowing that Zappa was a Mozart. We say what no other Zappa fan club has ever said. We even talk about how he predicted Ion or acts it out. There's not one Zappa person who'll know what we're talking about or even believe it. And then it ends up with the conclusion that Bob is the greatest musician in history because I stand on Frank's shoulders. So how's that for a punchline?
No, that's epic. Epic.
Yeah, that's epic. You like that?
Yeah.
That's epic, Bert.
Yeah.
Bert was there. He was part of it. Here's someone who got their hand up 5 times. I don't know who they are. Clearwater. Go ahead. Who are you? Your number.
Jean's on SIP as well, Bob. Jean's on the board. She wants to be on SIP.
And SIP. I clicked that off. I don't know. But that's the student.
You are now a host.
Oh, yeah. There's Jean. Okay, there's Jean. Who's 727?
It's me, Bobby. How are you doing today?
Oh, Corbin. Now, do you know Osborne? Do you know who Corbin is? He's a great Zappa fan.
I think I've heard him before on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, and his mind was destroyed by Zappa. But you can get a few cents.
My mind was destroyed by what? Whoa.
By Zappa.
No. Zappa was a very sick man. Okay, man. Seriously. The guy was a mathematical genius, a complete, amazing guitarist, adept at all arrangements, splicing of old tapes and things, arrangements, orchestral, symphonic music, conducting, and he knew what he was going for. Pretty much, when I talked, who's the clarinet player that does Moan Herb's Vacation?
Was that the Fowler brother?
No, it's not the Fowler brothers. But anyway, he plays the clarinet, leads the clarinet in the orchestra for Moan Herb's Vacation. Right. And
Ian Underwood?
No, it's not Ian Underwood. This is a few years after this. And I asked him a very specific question, probably about 83, 84, and I said, well, what was it like? Peter Ocker is this guy's name. Pete Ocker is the guy's name.
Yeah.
And he said, man, it was so difficult working around Frank because he had 3 or 4 products going on at one time. He was rehearsing a rock band in one room. He was doing a symphonic orchestra in another room. He was doing him and some guy on a guitar and maybe some guy on a tuba just to make some noise for the fuck of it. And then just
and making a video, Corbin.
Yeah, of course. And why I say Zappa was a very sick individual. I think this is more of an LA thing. But 200 Motels pretty much tells the story. That was pretty much how he got successful. He counted the hotels that he went to. And in the real Frank Zappa book, he says they said I ate shit on stage one time. And he said the closest I ever came to eating shit was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and that's where my grandmother used to live.
Oh wow! Yeah, and he talked about the Holiday Inn buffet. The Holiday Inn buffet was shit. Like the rumor was that he tried to outgross Ozzy Osbourne, so he ate shit on stage, which he never did, but that's the rumor. And Zappa begins his book with that story. He says, first of all, let's dispel some rumors about me. I never fucking ate any shit on stage, and the only time I ate shit, or the one I remember, was the Holiday Inn buffet in Fayetteville, Arkansas, or someplace.
They call it Vietnam, but Fayetteville, North Carolina. And my grandmother used to live in a trailer park there, and I used to go and stay every summer there. And it was great for a young kid to be outside.
Didn't go, but you're not finishing your thought. Why is he sick?
Because he takes diminished happiness in just like this spontaneous, just so out the window that basically it has to make the non-Zappaites and the non-Ionettes basically they're scratching their heads saying, what the fuck's going on here? Now here's a good story with Steve Vai.
How is that?
Listen, let me finish. Let me finish it. What I'm saying is I had the same guitar teacher as Steve Vai had, which was Steve Carter. And at the time, he said he had opened for a gig the Mothers have mentioned roughly 66, 67.
Yeah.
And they brought all their equipment in, my guitar teacher, Steve Carter, and, cover band opening for Zappa. And anyway, basically, they didn't get paid a whole lot, the opening band, which is typical. But Zappa came out, they had all their, they did a sound check, they had all their instruments set up, and Frank came out and polished a pair of orange shoes that he was wearing for about 2.5 hours and didn't say a word, and the audience loved it. And then he walked off stage. And then, this is an authentic story. And the guy was pissed. He was like, "No, we busted our ass getting a gig and blah blah blah. And that's that asshole and this and that asshole and this." Now, and I was like, "Well, why didn't people just walk out on this shit?" But
because they were in the way that they knew he wouldn't do that forever, and he would start playing. And now I've heard that kind of story about him. I've never heard him say he did that. It's rumors that he sat on stage. He always played. He might have did it for 10 minutes and just sat there polishing.
No, this was 2.5 hours.
Okay, you talk to Don Preston or anybody in the Mothers back then. I bet you they'll say, no, that never happened. Because
I guarantee they'll say that happened. I guarantee they'll say that happened. We've got to get an interview with Don Preston. I'll just do my best.
Yeah, we'll go over this with Don Preston. Right, we'll go over this with Don Preston. But the point is that that would be a one-time thing if he did it. Look, he came out. They did all kinds. Like their Osborne. That's the way he would insult the audience. He'd come out there and polish his shoes and not play. But the audience knew that was going to just go for a while. Eventually he would play. Right. I can't believe that he went 2 hours without playing and left. No, the man would have fire sued him.
Yeah, but you never know. You never know what's going on backstage. Maybe they didn't have the waiver. What do they call them? The rider. Maybe they didn't have the food right or the hotel right or transportation.
Corbin, don't talk over everybody. You get your bit and then calm down. I'll have to mute it. But Osborne saying, what did he do? You didn't get it, Osborne. Corbin saying he polished his orange shoes for 2 hours. He sat there on stage polishing his shoes. But he didn't do that. Corbin's a sick man. You got a sick man calling Zappa a sick man. That's the problem. Corbin has illustrated what is sick about fucking Zappa.
Yeah, I can't see Zappa doing that, though.
No, he wouldn't. He didn't do it. But Corbin, you have not proven or explained what is sick about Zappa.
Watch Baby Snakes, okay? And he takes immense pleasure in just doing the most absurd thing just to get people to go, this dude is out. You know, like when he's tickling Roy Estrada's chin, and he goes, he's not eating, he's reading. Watch him eat while he's eating. What's he doing? No, he's not eating, he's reading. No, he's not reading, he's eating. Watch him eat while he's eating.
You're saying that's what Zappa said about Roy? You're saying that's what...
No, it's in Baby Snakes. It was an old...
it lasts 13 seconds. It's 13 seconds. He throws the toilet paper in the ice. Look, he just jumps around. He makes fun of his bodyguards. He gets John Smothers to sing that song, and Smothers can't sing, and Frank embarrasses him, but it only lasts like 30 seconds.
Yeah, I can see Frank doing that. I can see him doing that.
Yes.
I can see him pointing out. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, he pointed out the foibles. He liked his musicians to have some eccentricity. He would exploit it, talk about it, make them do it, but also they were great musicians. But he always was commenting on, it's like I would run this show if there weren't so many sensitive people. I'd start saying what I know, you fuckers, and naming you and calling you all out. But I'm not sick like Frank, so I don't do it. But I could.
Right. Right, yeah. I see what you mean. But it's that lack of restraint. But it's that lack of restraint that makes his music so raw.
That's right. Yeah, he's totally free. And like there's Ed Sanders of the Fugs did a book on Zappa's risque lyric songs and said no one had taken advantage of the freedom of speech amendment number 1, article number 1 in the Constitution, where you have the freedom of speech. He says historically no one took and exploited that freedom as much as Zappa did. He went way beyond the bounds of what freedom of speech should be. He went way beyond being decent. He just went ridiculous, and so he even pushed the Constitution, and then he ended up defending the Constitution in front of Congress in 1985. So it's very symmetrical, his life. Now, the other thing about him is you see, they talk about the certain way he was in the early 70s, which I just played you, that roaring lead guitar, which we didn't hear much of in the 60s. It's not on the albums. He did it in concerts, but nobody knew he could play like that until 70, 71, after he broke up the Mothers, who've been with him for 5 years. He then came into a new level. And then he did a different kind of rock, comedy rock with the Turtles. And then he did some other kind of stuff in the 70s. But then they say in the 80s, when he did the first live radio TV simulcast for MTV was just starting in 81, the reviewer of this book says he was very serious about his music. He had dropped the humor. And then he goes into some other style in the late 80s. So Frank put on different postures, mental attitudes towards his music in like 2 and 3 year phases. See, that's what's incredible, and I show that in my chart. The stages of apprehension, him putting on, say, paranoia, then he puts on schizophrenia, then he puts on hysteria, then he puts on panic, then he puts on ecstasy, and he puts on all these moods with certain musicians in a certain band for a couple of years, and then he does. Then people they go to him again expecting what they were used to for 2 years, and he's totally different, and they can't take it. He's totally different
because he keeps moving.
Yeah, he's like Ian does phases, and then no one knew that he was privately writing orchestral music and paying for major orchestras